Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere loud, divine, and extremely ungoverned. Picture this, Mount Olympus at golden hour. The clouds are drifting slow, the breeze smells like ambrosia and ozone, and there's a soft harp plinking somewhere in the distance. But something's off. The birds are too quiet. A few grapevines are shivering nervously in the corner. And Zeus is looking like a man whose wife just walked out the front door, with luggage, because tonight, Hera is taking a vacation. You probably won't survive this version of Olympus. Frankly, without Hera around, nobody does. But don't worry, you won't need to. You just need to lie back, listen in, and let the soothing descent into mythological mismanagement lull you to sleep. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening in from somewhere cozy, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where my sleepy travelers are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins, as many stories do, with one goddess reaching the end of her godly patience. You've been married for a few thousand years. Your husband turns into animals at parties. Your stepsons keep creating volcanoes in the carpet. And your fellow immortals treat you like a walking mood swing with a peacock obsession. So you being Hera, Queen of Olympus, goddess of marriage, women, and excellent side-eye, decide that enough is enough. You're going on vacation, not a diplomatic mission. Not a tour of temples or ceremonial wine tastings. No, this is a real vacation. No responsibilities, no lightning bolt diplomacy, and absolutely no fixing whatever mess the other gods are currently brewing in the background. The first sign of Hera's departure isn't even a thunderclap. It's the sound of a wardrobe closing. You gather your things, a bag made of phoenix feathers, a golden comb shaped like a lioness, and a stack of strongly worded out-of-office notices carved into marble tablets. You leave one for Zeus, brief, elegant, and only slightly threatening, and another for Hestia, because at least she keeps things from catching fire. There's no fanfare. Just a glint of divine sandals lifting off the cloud bank, and then silence. Now, to mortals, the queen of the gods going on vacation might sound like a trivial bit of gossip. But to Olympus, this is a crisis. Hera, for all her well-earned reputation as the patron saint of grudges, is also the one who keeps things mostly functional. She's the cosmic clipboard. The divine project manager. The immortal who actually reads the calendar and reminds people when Jupiter is in retrograde. Without her, things unravel fast. Zeus stares at the empty throne for a solid hour. It's unclear if he's contemplating his life choices, or just wondering if he can eat cookies in bed now. Historians still argue whether Zeus was genuinely worried about his wife's absence, or simply stunned that someone actually dared to leave him. And that's when Hermes shows up holding a scroll. Hey, he says, casually flipping through it, so, I think she left this checklist. It's a color-coded itinerary of do not let this happen warnings. By line item 2, Hermes is already skipping pages. By line item 6, Ares is using it as a coaster. Zeus, in classic Zeus fashion, decides the best course of action is to do absolutely nothing. She just needs a break, he mutters, reaching for the ambrosia. We'll be fine. Spoiler, they are not fine. As the queen's sandal prints fade into the mist, Olympus shifts. The clouds feel looser. The rules a little more flexible. You hear laughter from the west wing. Somewhere, a lyre twangs out of tune. And just like that, the gods begin to realize. No Hera means no supervision, This is the part where you stretch out your legs under your ambrosia-scented blanket and enjoy the first few moments of serene silence. Because it's the last calm moment anyone will experience on Olympus for a while. Now, let's talk about the packing list. See, when you're a goddess, you don't just grab a change of clothes and your toothbrush. Hera's bag includes several scented oils, one labeled Warrior's Despair, 3 divine disguises, including cautious cow and respectable crone, and a small travel-sized jar of peacock glitter. Modern archaeologists would give anything to see it. Unfortunately, it evaporates on contact with mortal air. Very exclusive, she chooses not to bring a chariot, opting instead for something quieter, a golden sky yacht shaped like a swan. It runs on moonlight and the mild shame of unfaithful husbands. You board it gently, shoes clicking on the silver deck, and lean back against the cushioned seats. With one last look over your shoulder, you glide off into the clouds, and back on Olympus, Zeus sneezes, somewhere, a lightning bolt misfires, and the gods, freshly unsupervised, are already starting to make plans. Without Hera, Olympus starts to feel like a college dorm without the RA. You'd think that a group of all-powerful immortals, beings who can hurl planets and summon whirlwinds, would possess some self-restraint. You'd be very, very wrong. The first thing that happens is remarkably on brand for Zeus. He decides to throw a feast. Not a modest one, either. A welcome to unsupervised freedom banquet featuring bottomless nectar, a suspicious number of golden goblets, and a new toga that he insists was gifted by the winds. Historians still argue whether this toga existed or if he just forgot his old one somewhere embarrassing. You walk into the great hall, if you can call it walking when the clouds ripple like sponge cake beneath your feet. The place is in full chaos mode. Apollo's already taken over the music, strumming his lyre like it's a lounge gig. Dionysus is handing out grapes from a floating tray, and Artemis is glaring at anyone who looks like they might spill ambrosia on the floor. Zeus stands at the center like a dad who just remembered he has custody this weekend and decides to win points with unrestrained gifts and zero rules. Let's just enjoy ourselves, he says, waving a goblet. We deserve it. You watch as Poseidon blinks slowly, like he's considering whether or not to flood the punch bowl, and then it begins. The rules, already loose under Hera's firm control, start slipping completely. Gods begin swapping thrones for fun. Ares and Hermes decide to redecorate the judgment hall with battle flags and glow sticks. Even Hestia, who usually minds her hearth with the vigilance of a librarian guarding a fireplace, has temporarily left to meditate in a pile of soft pillows. Or possibly to cry into a pot of stew. You see, Hera didn't just keep the gods in line. She also kept the divine order in place. Like which day was for declaring prophecies, and which day was for banishing mortals to unfortunate fates. Without her, it's all mashed together into one big, syrupy celestial mess, and oh, Zeus tries to help. He really does. On day 2 of Hera's vacation, he calls a council meeting, which is held in a hot tub made of clouds and poor choices. Most of the gods don't show up. Aphrodite claims she's busy conditioning her hair with rosewater and intentions. Hephaestus is deep in his forge, ignoring reality. Athena sends a scroll that simply reads, "Absolutely not." Still, Zeus is determined. He appoints himself temporary supreme domestic overseer, a title he clearly just made up, his first decree. More feasts, his second. An open invitation to mortals to come vibe with the gods. This goes exactly as you'd expect. You're watching from the sidelines when a group of terrified shepherds are carried up Mount Olympus on Pegasus' back. They're still clutching their lunch pails. One of them is named Mikan, and he whispers, "Am I being punished or blessed?" No one answers him. They're too busy watching Dionysus teach them how to do the grapevine dance with actual grapevines. Meanwhile, the sun is rising and setting at weird intervals because Apollo got distracted tuning his lyre and forgot his solar route. He's experimenting with jazz scales now, which is messing with the gravitational tides. Historians still debate whether this is what caused the great cheese shortage in Boeotia that year. Coincidence? Perhaps. But when the sun rises 5 times in a single day, cows tend to get confused. You wander through the hallways, and they're already looking different. No more crisp marble and polished torchlight. Now it's paper lanterns strung between columns. Someone's draped a toga over a statue of Athena, and she does not look amused. Even the peacocks are disoriented. Now, fun fact, Hera's sacred peacocks normally patrol the palace gardens, plucking weeds and occasionally judging intruders. But with their mistress gone, they've gone rogue, forming little cliques, gossiping loudly, and stealing anything shiny. One is currently hoarding Hephaestus screwdrivers, and yet, through it all, Zeus insists it's fine, you know, he says, lounging sideways on his throne like a golden retriever with god powers. This is what the realm needed. A little fresh air. A little spontaneity. Right. Because nothing says healthy spontaneity like letting Hermes deliver messages while roller skating through cloud corridors, occasionally crashing into Athena's strategy boards. This brings us to the moment Zeus tries something new. He decides, boldly, foolishly, with the confidence only an immortal man with sky powers can muster, that he's going to reorganize the calendar. I don't see why we need months, he says. We should just have one really long now. To make it official, he renames the days of the week: Zeus Day, Zeus Day, Mid-Zeus, Thro-Zeus, Fry-Zeus, Saturn's Problem, and Nap Day. He is deeply proud of this. Poseidon throws a wave at him. This brief act of rebellion earns Poseidon a friendly wrestling match in the Hall of Statues. 3 statues lose their heads. One grows a beard out of spite. By now, Olympus feels like the end of a dinner party where no one remembered to take out the trash, and someone's trying to make soup out of the candles. You, meanwhile, are just trying to stay out of the line of fire. You grab a goblet of nectar, non-fermented, don't worry, settle into a cloud-sculpted chaise, and watch it all unfold like the world's most glamorous sitcom. The sun flickers overhead. A peacock steals your sandals. A satyr runs past yelling about the prophecy of infinite appetizers. And in the distance, just barely audible, you hear the faint whoosh of Hera's sky yacht sailing farther away. It doesn't take long before the Olympians start to realize something is off. Not just party-level chaos anymore, but a slow, creeping awareness that they may have overestimated their own ability to self-govern. Think of it like a family dog learning the hard way that eating a whole roast chicken when no one's watching leads directly to regret. You wake up, or at least shift from one puff of cloud couch to another, and realize the sun is already setting, even though Apollo swore it would be an early morning. Apparently, he meant early in spirit, not in time. The first real sign of strain isn't a thunderbolt or an argument. It's paperwork. A literal mountain of divine petitions from mortals has piled up in the Hall of Prayers. Normally Hera handles this with grace, attention, and the sort of terrifying efficiency that makes interns weep in relief. But now, the scrolls are spilling into the hallways. Some are being used as table runners. One got turned into a toga for a statue of Persephone, who's not even home. You tiptoe around the scroll piles. One reads, "Please bless my crops." Another, "My goat keeps screaming at midnight. Is it cursed?" A third, "Why does my husband smell like fish after market day?" That one's addressed to Aphrodite for some reason. No one is answering any of them. Ares, who has the attention span of a hammer in a helmet, volunteers to take over. He gets through 3 scrolls before declaring all petitions to be acts of war. The goat? Definitely an enemy. The fish husband? Clearly a spy. He storms off to find his sword. You'd think Athena would step in now. She does, in her own way, from the safety of her tower, which, by the way, now has do not disturb. Thinking very hard carved above the door, she begins crafting a series of elaborate logic puzzles. Mortals must now solve riddles to receive blessings. One poor farmer ends up with a divine crossword puzzle instead of rain. No one is answering any of them. Ares, who has the attention span of a hammer in a helmet, volunteers to take over. He gets through 3 scrolls before declaring all petitions to be acts of war. The goat? Definitely an enemy. The fish husband? Clearly a spy. He storms off to find his sword. You'd think Athena would step in now. She does, in her own way, from the safety of her tower, which, by the way, now has do not disturb. Thinking very hard carved above the door, she begins crafting a series of elaborate logic puzzles. Mortals must now solve riddles to receive blessings. One poor farmer ends up with a divine crossword puzzle instead of rain. Historians still argue whether this was meant as a teaching tool or if Athena was just passive-aggressively bored. Meanwhile, back at the feast hall that never ends, Dionysus is staging a new form of entertainment. Mortals say the darndest things. He's brought up the shepherd Micon again, now wearing a crown of fennel and uttering prophecies that sound suspiciously like dinner recipes. On the 3rd moon of cheese, Micon declares solemnly, the rivers shall turn to soup. Everyone claps. Dionysus hands him more wine. You're not sure if this is cult behavior or just very creative improv, then Hermes gets an idea. Always dangerous, since we're not getting anything official done, he says, swirling a goblet, we should just rebrand Olympus. There's a pause. Poseidon squints from his saltwater jacuzzi. Hermes continues, completely serious. Think about it. We're too divine. Too classical. Let's go modern. Funkier. Edgier. Sexy chaos, but on brand. And just like that, Olympus is being redecorated. Columns get neon lighting. The oracle chamber is renamed the Vibe Room. Artemis's hunting grounds are temporarily converted into an experiential forest walk that includes mood music and lavender-scented wolves. No one is answering any of them. Ares, who has the attention span of a hammer in a helmet, volunteers to take over. He gets through 3 scrolls before declaring all petitions to be acts of war. The goat? Definitely an enemy. The fish husband? Clearly a spy. He storms off to find his sword. You'd think Athena would step in now. She does, in her own way, from the safety of her tower, which, by the way, now has do not disturb. Thinking very hard carved above the door, she begins crafting a series of elaborate logic puzzles. Mortals must now solve riddles to receive blessings. One poor farmer ends up with a divine crossword puzzle instead of rain. Historians still argue whether this was meant as a teaching tool or if Athena was just passive-aggressively bored. Meanwhile, back at the feast hall that never ends, Dionysus is staging a new form of entertainment. Mortals say the darndest things. He's brought up the shepherd Micon again, now wearing a crown of fennel and uttering prophecies that sound suspiciously like dinner recipes. On the 3rd moon of cheese, Micon declares solemnly, the rivers shall turn to soup. Everyone claps. Dionysus hands him more wine. You're not sure if this is cult behavior or just very creative improv, then Hermes gets an idea. Always dangerous, since we're not getting anything official done, he says, swirling a goblet, we should just rebrand Olympus. There's a pause. Poseidon squints from his saltwater jacuzzi. Hermes continues, completely serious. Think about it. We're too divine. Too classical. Let's go modern. Funkier. Edgier. Sexy chaos, but on brand. And just like that, Olympus is being redecorated. Columns get neon lighting. The oracle chamber is renamed the Vibe Room. Artemis's hunting grounds are temporarily converted into an experiential forest walk that includes mood music and lavender-scented wolves. You pass by Apollo in the main courtyard, now hosting open mic prophecy nights. One muse is attempting to freestyle the Iliad while holding a pan flute. It's deeply unhelpful. Back in the clouds, the mortals are starting to notice. Rains fall in weird directions. Crops sprout in strange shapes. One man in Thebes grows 3 heads of lettuce from a single olive pit and thinks he's been chosen for something. Spoiler, he hasn't, and the worst part. The temples are growing quiet, without Hera's influence gently guiding the sacred rituals. Many priests and priestesses are unsure what to do. The incense burns too fast. The omens feel muddled. One priest swears he saw a squirrel blink at him in Morse code. Another finds a golden comb in the offering bowl and is too afraid to touch it. Even the sacrifices are going awry. See, Hera had a very particular schedule and system for divine offerings. Now that she's not there to moderate, the gods start competing over them. Give me the cows. Ares roars, no, I want the cows, says Demeter, but symbolically. Hestia just wants someone to pass her a quiet loaf of barley bread and leave her out of it. It all escalates when 2 altars in Delphi catch fire at once, one by lightning, the other by dramatic disagreement. In a rare moment of unity, the gods hold a vote. Aphrodite suggests drawing lots. Hermes suggests a chariot race. Apollo suggests everyone do what he says for once. Zeus, finally exasperated, declares, we need to find Hera. And just like that, they remember, no one actually knows where she went. She didn't leave a forwarding address. No divine tracking scroll. Just a note that read, do not attempt contact unless Olympus is actively crumbling. Also, don't touch my peacocks, which, of course, someone already has. You take a breath, drifting gently on your favorite cloud seat as the golden light fades into a confused sort of twilight. A harp plinks somewhere in the distance, but it's wildly. So now begins what historians might generously call the Great Search, and what you might more accurately describe as a bunch of powerful siblings frantically retracing their mother's footsteps after leaving the stove on for 4 days straight. Zeus calls a meeting. Again. This one is not in a hot tub, which is already a sign of rising concern. Instead, it's held in the council hall, though now, it smells faintly of fennel crowns and someone has drawn mustaches on every fresco. You're there, curled into a comfortable cloud, sipping tepid nectar and watching as the gods trickle in, all trying very hard not to look guilty. Zeus clears his throat. I have consulted the omens, he says. No you didn't, mutters Athena, you asked your eagle if it had seen a lady with strong opinions and vacation sandals. Same thing, Zeus replies, brushing imaginary dust off his shoulder, but the truth is, they're all worried now. Not just about the chaos. Not even about the goats on the moon, don't ask. It's about the feeling that something vital has left with Hera. Like the center of gravity is missing. Like no matter how many ambrosia smoothies they drink, nothing feels properly divine, so, they start looking. Hermes volunteers to check the mortal world. He puts on his winged sandals, grabs a satchel of bribes, blessings, and zips off, his first stop. A seaside temple in Samos, where he interrogates a priestess by casually lounging on the altar and saying, "Seen a queen lately?" She hits him with a broom. Meanwhile, Athena, ever the strategist, unrolls an enormous celestial map. She marks every place Hera's ever visited in the last 5 centuries. It takes 3 cloud assistants and 1 immortal ferret to finish, according to her past patterns, Athena says, adjusting her helmet. She favors locations with 3 qualities: order, scented oils, and a decent wine list. Dionysus perks up. "So, my house?" "Definitely not your house," Athena says flatly. You trail along as teams begin forming. It's like the world's weirdest scavenger hunt. Artemis heads north, toward the pine needle forests of Thrace, saying Hera might be reconnecting with ancient sky deities. Apollo offers to come along, but she says, only if you promise not to sing at the trees again. Poseidon dives into the seas, grumbling something about sea nymphs owing him a few favors. Ares decides to check battlefields, because if Hera were hiding, surely it would be somewhere dramatic. This logic is not sound, and Zeus declares he will stay in Olympus, to coordinate. You suspect he just doesn't want to admit he doesn't know where to look. You follow Hermes on his second trip. He's grown more creative in his search methods. He's now disguising himself as a goat and wandering through mortal marketplaces hoping someone spills gossip. It almost works. In a small village near Knossos, an old woman tells him a tale about a radiant stranger who passed through last week, traded 3 amethysts for a bar of rose soap, and left behind a perfect apple tart. "No one that graceful's been here since the old queen," she says. "You know, the one who made the cypress trees bow." Hermes straightens up so fast he drops his goat hat. Back on Olympus, news spreads fast. A lead. Finally, they gather again, this time in the Garden of Ambrosia, which has now been mostly overrun by talkative peacocks and at least one confused minotaur eating grapes off a vine like it's a buffet. The gods make a plan, or rather, Athena makes a plan. They will dispatch small teams across the mortal world, not to force Hera's return. They're not that reckless. Well, Ares is, but he's distracted by his own reflection today, but to understand why she left, and maybe, to convince her to come back voluntarily. You wake, if one can truly wake on Olympus, where dreams and reality swirl together like honey in warm milk, to the sight of Hermes returning, panting slightly, sandals askew, and holding a sheep, not Hera, obviously. Just a sheep. He claims the sheep knows something. It doesn't. You float past a balcony where Aphrodite is attempting to pack. She's brought 17 tunics, 3 different perfumes, and a full-length bronze mirror she insists is necessary for morale. Dionysus, on the other hand, shows up with a wine jug and an enthusiastic mortal bard named Timon who's never left his village and thinks Olympus is a kind of fancy hill. You join them on the first leg of the southward journey. Descending in soft clouds through warm air, the mortal world stretching out below like a faded map. Fields quilt the land, olive trees dotting the hillsides, and the wind carries the faint scent of baking bread and sea salt. Your destination is Cyrene, a city of lush gardens, herb-laced breezes, and temples with names that sound like lullabies. The idea is simple: if Hera's traveling, she'll gravitate toward elegance. Order. Spaces where things are clean and symmetrical and no one forgets to use coasters. Cyrene fits the bill. You arrive at the Temple of the Soothing Sky, an ancient place where priestesses still paint their walls with crushed lilac and leave offerings of pomegranate seeds wrapped in silk. Aphrodite immediately starts mingling. Dionysus wanders off in search of a local fermentation club. you follow a trail of petals and find an old archivist who swears a veiled woman passed through 3 nights ago. She didn't speak much, just helped sweep the courtyard, blessed a fig tree that had stopped bearing fruit, and left behind a sandal carved with tiny peacock feathers. Did she mention her name? Aphrodite asks, breathlessly hopeful. No, the archivist says. But she smiled at the moon like it was an old friend. That's exactly the kind of poetic nonsense that somehow makes everyone sure it was Hera. But here's the problem. Hera isn't just hiding, she's watching, because across the city, odd things are happening. In the baths, the steam begins to whisper. In the fountains, coins start resurfacing. At one point, a child hands you a daisy chain and says, "The lady with the gold eyes told me you'd need this." You definitely do not need it. But you keep it anyway. Historians still argue whether these subtle miracles were signs of Hera's actual presence, or just divine memory echoing through places she once loved. That night, Dionysus throws a small, informal search party, his words. It involves grape juice, mortal poetry, and a game called Who's Most Likely to Be Smote First. Hermes wins every round, even when absent. Meanwhile, Aphrodite quietly slips away to a grove of myrtle trees, lays out a simple altar, and lights a small lamp. She doesn't say much. Just, if you're watching, you can come back whenever you're ready. We're sorry. Even if we haven't said it right. The flame flickers blue, a sign. Maybe. Or just a gust of wind. You float above the scene, taking it all in. The ancient city, its candlelit courtyards, its creeping vines, and the small but stubborn feeling that something is changing. In the morning, a gift appears on the temple steps, a perfect loaf of honey bread. Warm, fragrant, and untouched by ants. Attached is a single fig leaf, no note, just the faintest scent of jasmine and lightning. Back on Olympus, things have not improved. Poseidon's attempt to control the rising number of miraculous floods has backfired. He's now banned from at least 4 coastal regions. Athena has drafted a 10-page outline entitled Steps Toward Responsible Divinity, but Ares used it as a napkin. Zeus, increasingly unnerved, calls upon the fates. They give him a riddle. When the shepherds sleep, the lion counts the stars. He spends the next day star. Even the peacocks are acting strange. They've started forming tight circles, pecking in rhythm. You suspect they know more than they let on. Meanwhile, you return from Cyrene with Dionysus and Aphrodite. The mood is quieter. There's no proof, no confirmation. But something about the visit feels noted. Like a pebble dropped in a pond, like Hera knows they're looking. And isn't quite ready to be found. You settle back into your softest corner of cloud, pull a feathered blanket around your shoulders, and let your mind drift. There's something oddly soothing about divine failure, the idea that even immortals need time, that even goddesses take breaks, that even on Mount Olympus, where the skies shine like polished coin and the stars never burn out, someone might still whisper, "I just need a minute." And when she's ready, she'll return. You wake, if waking is the right word for the gentle unraveling of thoughts that comes from drifting too long in a place where time is optional, to the sound of someone arguing with a lion, specifically, Ares. He's standing in the middle of the Olympus main hall, wearing half of his armor and trying to coax a lion down from the chandelier with a meat skewer and a mildly threatening poem. The lion, named Argos, not to be confused with Argus, the 100-eyed guy Hera once hired for surveillance purposes. Long story, is not cooperating. Zeus stands nearby, pinching the bridge of his nose. "This is what happens when she leaves," he mutters. "We're besieged by symbolism." Across the chamber, Athena is furiously taking notes. "This confirms my theory," she says, eyes gleaming. Hera's absence is creating metaphysical feedback. Animals are behaving oddly, nature is overexpressing itself, and divine symbols are going rogue. This lion isn't just a lion, it's a manifestation of her authority, ungrounded. Hephaestus, polishing a cog the size of a dinner plate, adds, the chandelier's definitely going to need replacing. You drift by lazily, sipping warm ambrosia. It tastes like roasted pear and slightly burnt cinnamon, and it makes your eyelids feel heavier than necessary. Meanwhile, the lion eventually climbs down. It saunters past everyone, tail swishing with disdain, and curls up in Hera's empty throne. Then it sneezes. Ares throws up his hands. Fine. The lion's in charge now. You're halfway through wondering whether this is an improvement when a breeze drifts through the chamber, carrying the scent of myrrh and rosemary. It brushes across the thrones, across the assembled gods, and causes one of Hera's peacock feather fans to fall gently to the floor. Nobody speaks, not even the lion. Later that day, Hestia invites everyone to a quiet gathering around the central hearth. No ceremonies. No speeches. Just warm bread, herb tea, and a silence so deep you can hear the fire sighing. She passes around old scrolls, bits of hymns, fragments of prayers once directed to Hera. Aphrodite reads one aloud, to she who guards the door and the vow, whose silence keeps the storms at bay. Her voice wavers slightly. Dionysus offers her wine. She waves it off. It's not sadness, exactly, it's homesickness, for order, for discipline, for someone who used to make sure the godly laundry got done and that storms had proper permits. Historians still argue whether this hearth gathering was the first true acknowledgement by the Olympians that maybe, just maybe, they had taken Hera for granted. Meanwhile, you drift off toward the eastern wing, where Hephaestus has taken on a new project. He's building a mechanical peacock, not a particularly useful one. It mostly wobbles and makes confused cooing sounds, but it has beautifully etched brass feathers and tiny sapphires for eyes. She always liked the symmetry, he mutters. You nod. Then realize he can't see you. And nod again, just because it feels right. In the gardens, strange new flowers bloom overnight, sharp-angled irises, curling vines in precise spirals. You pick one and tuck it behind your ear. It hums, very faintly, like a lullaby composed by geometry. Messages begin to arrive from the mortal realm. Dream visions, omens and tea leaves, one particularly dramatic cow that walks into a temple and bows to a statue of Hera before loudly sitting down. All the signs are clear. Hera is out there, watching, possibly judging, almost definitely waiting. Waiting for what? That's the riddle. Some think she wants them to grovel, others believe she's testing their devotion, still others propose she just needed a break from managing immortal toddlers with lightning bolts. Whatever the truth, the gods begin making small changes. Artemis rewrites the rules of her sacred hunt to include kindness points. Apollo voluntarily stops composing poems about himself for a full hour. Even Zeus, yes, Zeus, starts reading old correspondence. You know things are serious when he drafts an actual apology letter. It begins, "Dearest Hera, your absence is noted and not appreciated, in the sense that we now understand how badly we misunderstood your role. Also, the goat uprising has reached level 3. Please advise." He signs it with his real name, not just King of the Gods. Progress, slow, bumbling, deeply chaotic progress. That night, a new constellation appears in the sky. 7 stars, shaped not like a crown, but like a sandal. The gods gather quietly on the viewing terrace. Nobody says a word. Not even Hermes. You lean against the cool marble railing and breathe in the mountain air, which smells faintly of ambrosia and clean linen. Something is coming, or returning, or simply revealing itself again. like a lion descending from a chandelier, like a perfectly folded note left on a pillow, like the soft echo of footsteps in a corridor you thought was empty. You drift gently, as one might through a dream, or a hallway made entirely of clouds and compromise, toward Olympus' east wing again, where Hermes is attempting something unprecedented, organization. Specifically, he's compiling a Where We've Looked for Hera scroll. It's very long. Most of it is doodles, at the top, Cyrene, marked with a tiny peacock, then, Delphi, Corinth, that one haunted olive grove, and a brief detour to an entirely imaginary island Dionysus insisted just had the right vibes. Hermes circles a blank spot on the scroll. "We haven't tried Sparta," he says, chewing the end of a reed pen. "I mean, who willingly goes to Sparta unless they're looking for trouble?" You find yourself floating toward the main courtyard, where Athena and Artemis are deep in conversation. Not about strategy or punishment or even honor, no, they're discussing something far more dangerous, feelings. Athena looks uncomfortable. What if she doesn't want to come back? Artemis shrugs. Then we keep going. That's what family does. Even dysfunctional, lightning-hurling family. You pass Dionysus, who is fashioning what appears to be a wine-scented care package. "Just a little something," he says. "Olives. A sleeping potion. An embroidered napkin that says, 'We're trying.'" Meanwhile, another ripple of signs begins on Earth. In Delos, a wind changes direction without warning and carries the scent of frankincense for 6 hours. In a remote mountain village, a midwife reports that a child was born with a birthmark shaped like a lotus, right over her heart. "The child didn't cry," she adds. "Just stared at us, like she knew we were all ridiculous." In Crete, bees begin to form spirals instead of hives. The locals take it as a message. Possibly about pollen. Possibly about patience. Historians still debate whether these events were actual divine signs or just unusually poetic weather patterns. But back on Olympus, things are shifting. Zeus has stopped pacing. Ares, unervingly, has started gardening. You find him hunched over a patch of marigolds, muttering to himself and gently brushing dirt from their petals. "She liked marigolds," he says when you float too close. Said they were stubborn. Said that was a compliment. It is, in Ares speak. He's built a tiny altar next to the flower bed. It's crude, probably flammable, and smells faintly of goat cheese. But it's sincere. You pass Hephaestus again, who's added a new function to the mechanical peacock. It now sings a lullaby when no one's in the room, except, of course, you are, and it sings anyway, just 3 notes. Repeating, soft. Unfinished, you drift out toward the edge of Olympus. To the overlook where Hera used to stand when she needed to be alone, but not too alone. The place still holds the memory of her presence, a single chair, shaped like a seashell, a dish of sea salt, and a reed flute, untouched. You pick it up, it plays only one note, flat and shy, like a voice clearing its throat, and just then, a new scent rises, chamomile. Distant rain. And that strange, inexplicable smell that only happens when something is about to return, not soon, necessarily, but certainly, somewhere, someone sneezes, and a thundercloud explodes into glitter. Hermes reappears, holding a crumpled scroll. "I found this in the hall of unfinished business," he says. The scroll is blank. Mostly. Except for a single line in Hera's handwriting. You'll understand, eventually. You stare at the words for a long time, no punctuation. No flourish, just that quiet confidence Hera always carried, the kind that didn't demand acknowledgement, but expected it anyway. Later that night, the gods hold a preliminary reconciliation dinner. There's no real agenda. Just roasted vegetables, stale bread, and a well-meaning attempt at diplomacy. Zeus tries to toast to our mutual effort at self-betterment. Aphrodite interrupts, just say, we miss you, you dramatic olive tree. The next morning, though on Olympus, time has the consistency of warm syrup, you find yourself hovering above the orchard, not just any orchard, Hera's orchard. No one has touched it since she left, the trees are geometrically spaced. Their fruit ripens at precisely the same angle to the sun. Even the bees fly in neat loops, like tiny air traffic controllers, and yet, something is off. The pomegranates are blooming slightly ahead of schedule, one tree is humming very softly. In a minor key, you float beneath its canopy, brushing a leaf. It trembles. And then you notice, someone's been pruning the trees, not sloppily. Not recklessly, deliberately, someone's been here. You glide toward the far edge of the orchard, where the stone path curves into what used to be her private sanctuary. The space is half empty now. No throne, no mirrors, no incense trays, but one thing remains, a single pair of sandals, Hera's sandals. The straps are sun-worn, the soles still shaped to her exact step. It's hard to describe the silence that surrounds them, except to say it feels like the pause before a door opens. You step back, metaphorically, since technically you don't have feet here, and turn to find Athena leaning against a fig tree, arms crossed. She's close, she says, as though continuing a conversation you hadn't yet started. How do you know? She hasn't struck any of us with frogs. Is that a metric? Athena shrugs. You measure what you can. Hermes joins you, munching on something unidentifiable but probably smuggled from a mortal marketplace. I got a new dream last night, he says. Hera in a chariot. Made of starlight. Pulled by oxen with gold-plated hooves. He pauses. Also, she was reading a cookbook. Not sure what that part meant. Historians still argue whether these divine visions meant anything or were just side effects of too much ambrosia-flavored cheese. You all sit in the orchard for a while, no one speaks. The wind rustles, thoughtfully, a single bee lands on Hermes' shoulder, does a tiny waggle dance, then flies away. You swear it spelled out the word soon. Back in the main hall, Dionysus is putting the final touches on what he's calling the apology banquet. There's an 8-cheese platter, a harpist who only plays minor chords, and a cake shaped like a gavel, symbolic accountability, he says, licking frosting from one finger. Also, the cake is filled with wine. Across the room, Zeus paces again, less like a thunderstorm, more like a nervous uncle trying not to mess up the reunion. He turns to Hestia. What if she never comes back? Hestia, stirring something in a copper pot that smells like lavender and philosophy. Doesn't look up, she will. How can you be sure? Because we're finally listening. Zeus sighs. You make it sound so simple. Hestia finally glances up. It was never complicated. Just uncomfortable. That night, you find a quiet perch near the edge of the Hall of Echoes, a long corridor where words once spoken can be overheard again if you know how to listen. You hear, she was always the one who remembered anniversaries. She once turned my ex into a bird because he ghosted me. Respect. She told me I was more than just my arrows. I didn't like her, Ares admits. I needed her. The hallway sighs, somewhere, a harp string snaps, you wander down into the mortal realm briefly, just to see if anything's stirring. In a quiet village tucked between olive groves and winding rivers, a priestess wakes from a dream of a woman in silver robes walking across the sky, scattering white feathers. She rises, walks outside, and finds one feather caught in her laundry. It's warm. In a seaside temple, waves suddenly form a perfect spiral, crashing in sequence like clockwork. Locals drop their fishing nets and kneel instinctively. In the sky, two stars that had long been considered separate blink once, together, and then remain still. Signs. Echoes. Foreshadowing, call it what you want. Hera is nearing. On Olympus, the gods prepare. Not with fanfare or parades, but with smaller things. Hestia has kept the hearth burning all this time, its flame now a little higher. Aphrodite has written a poem. It's terrible, but deeply sincere. Ares has planted a second patch of marigolds, and Zeus has stopped rehearsing speeches. Instead, he's setting the table. Hera's place remains untouched. No one dares sit there, but now, there is a folded napkin, a cup of her favorite nectar, and, at last, a stillness in the air, like the moment before a storm, or the breath before a name is spoken aloud. You wake, if such a word applies, to find Olympus unusually quiet, not ominous. Not empty, just that rare kind of hush that means everyone is holding their breath at the same time. Even the clouds above the mountain have stopped drifting. They sit in gentle suspension, as if unsure whether to part or thicken. You float through the colonnades, the tiled courtyards, the ivy-laced stairways. Something has shifted. In the hall of doors, a place where divine portals flicker in and out of view like lazy fireflies. One portal is glowing a soft rose gold. That color only means one thing: you're not the only one who notices. Hermes zips past, his winged sandals trailing faint lines of incense smoke. She's here, he says. Probably. Then he adds, okay, technically the portal could also mean someone's accidentally summoned a sea cow again, but I'm feeling optimistic. A chorus of minor key harp strings fills the air. Dionysus has arrived, carrying a basket of grapes and 3 separate apology notes, none of which are addressed correctly. Aphrodite emerges from her chamber wearing a robe that glimmers like morning dew and anxiety. Is this too much? She asks. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard. Absolutely, Hermes says. It's perfect. The gods gather in the central atrium, no trumpets. No grand declarations. Just standing. Waiting. Even Apollo shows up. For once without a lyre solo, the air begins to shimmer. And then, nothing, for a whole minute, maybe 2, you could hear a quill drop, and then, she steps through, not dramatically, not even slowly, just. Hera. As if she'd only popped out for a walk and took a slightly scenic route back. She looks radiant, of course, but not in that terrifying, thundercloud-browed way she's known for. No, this is travel-worn Hera. Robes slightly rumpled. A single feather caught in her hair. Sun on her shoulders. Calm, she glances around. No one speaks. You expect a grand speech, or a snide comment, or at least a commanding cough, but Hera just raises an eyebrow. Well, she says. Did you burn anything down while I was gone? Zeus clears his throat. Only metaphorically. She smirks. Progress. Aphrodite hands her a tiny cake with a single olive on top. Welcome back. Hera takes it. Doesn't eat it. Just holds it for a moment. Is this symbolic? She asks, extremely. Good. You drift closer, listening to the murmurs. Ares shuffles his feet like a scolded teenager. Nice sandals, he mumbles. She nods at him. Hermes steps forward, holding a bouquet of what appear to be wildly misidentified flowers. These are probably not poisonous. I'll risk it. Hestia is already tending the hearth, subtly turning up the flame without looking at Hera directly. It's like watching two parts of the same melody fall back into harmony. Zeus finally steps forward, awkward in that way only kings can be when they're trying to be humble. I didn't write a speech, he says. That is the speech, Hera replies. They lock eyes, the air doesn't crackle, it settles, like a quilt being laid gently over the whole mountaintop. Historians still argue whether Hera's return was predestined or spontaneous. Whether it marked a shift in divine order or just a particularly eloquent Tuesday, but there's no debating what happened next. She walked into the orchard, past the marigolds, past the still singing mechanical peacock, and sat down in her chair, the one by the overlook, the one that faced the world. She exhaled, and all across Olympus, the temperature dropped just enough to be pleasant. Even the bees relaxed. You drift beside her for a moment. No one else follows, not yet, just you and Hera and the sky. She doesn't speak, but she doesn't need to. She's home, and the gods, finally, have remembered how to wait.